All right, welcome everyone at the next Multi-Network Community Sync. Today is June 26th. I think last June meeting, and I have one topic to cover. I think this is not on just kick off the kind of continuation of the discussion of what's next going up to the for this kind of group to work on. But I think before that, anyone else has some progress status. So from my side, before is I'm still waiting for the repos to be created. There is no movement, so I'm a bit confused whether that should be somehow pushed or anything. Do we have SIG network this week? No, we don't. So so basically I'm kind of stuck to kind of publish anything. That's kind of annoying. That's kind of from my side. Any other updates?
There will be the DRA or new DRA that will be released in 1.31, and I think it changed a lot of things in the spec. Like we no longer have this paramref, for example.
Okay. Do you have maybe a link to what it's going to be? Because I'm, oh my gosh, I think.
I will put.
Thank you. That got merged, or no? That's a draft.
Yeah, it's still in progress. They don't know if everything will be merged when 1.31 will be released, but they are trying to, and they are working on it. I haven't tried these changes yet, but I'm planning to do it.
I wonder whether they have like a files change, 500 files change. That's a nice chunk. So API, where does he have it? It's auto-generated probably. Trying to find the change. Oh, there it is. Utils, core, types. Here. Resource claim name. I think this is for pod, right? Or not? Let me. No, I don't think that's fair to look at it right now. But yeah, let's review this and see. Is this? Does it link? It's the way you had it. Does it link a cap that's kind of calls this out? What's changing?
There's
Here.
this other repo,
Yeah.
working group device management, otherwise.
No, there is PRY. We need it. This is an implementation of the revised API. Okay, yeah, I see it. So DRA update for 131. I think that's what needs to be read. Files change, and I think this is what has to go. What needs to go over. There is not much, or maybe enough for us to hurt. Okay, so I assume we need to get over this and see what changed really. Let me just share that link because this is more important. Conversation. Oh my. Yeah, I think this is the cap. That's what we wanted to look at and read through. I don't know what to say, but I think, yeah, let's see where that goes and where that lands. I think that merged, so I assume we need to review that and see whether we are still applicable. So you're saying they completely get rid of? Did you get a chance to read through that, Lionel?
No, I checked the working group device management. They said that it was a POC, and then their work will be based on this POC. So I checked the API in it, and I could not find the
Got
paragraph
it.
in the
I
claim.
see. I see. All right.
I don't know exactly which cap it was, because I think there's many caps for the area.
Yeah, that's why I was kind of confused. I think that PR that you linked links this one that I linked, so I think that's the source. I would assume there are changes in 2 files for that cap that I linked for the previous version, and I think that's the new cap that they had as well. So it does changes for both. So yeah, we need to go over the changes and then what really changed. Resource handlers device class now. Yeah, we need to go over that and see what's still applicable. All right. Your possible missing. Any other updates? All right. So let's. What I want to do next is go over the requirements and see what's kind of what stuff we covered and what's next on the plate that we want to talk about. But now, in light of the DRA, is that something that now I'm confused whether should we pursue that or yeah, let's maybe just go with that and see whether we need to revisit. We can start talk about still talk about some of the requirements that we want to do and discuss, and then if anything changes with DRA, then we'll have to revisit, because that will just kind of change the whole core. It's kind of moving target. We were warned about this, so I think that's a given. Okay, let me just look at this guy. So share this tab instead. So those are the requirements that we kind of identified from the very beginning of this effort. I don't want to read through those, but I think last time we went through that with DRA. So the first phase of whatever we wanted to do would cover that, like being able to reference a object that kind of represents a network in a pod, in a cluster, and then do the reference in a pod, and then all the kind of characteristics of that object and how it behaves, a default network, all that is called out through this. And then this is, by the way, if someone wants to kind of follow up and have this, I can paste it in the chat. So this is the readable version of the initial cap that we had. That probably have to be kind of canceled anyway, abandoned eventually. But for now, it's still here, so something to kind of look at. I think phase 2, what was the next thing to see was provide access control to a specific pod network. Oh, okay. So this is basically ACL. So how do we control RBAC the access, right, to pod network? So that's a good point that we can talk about. I know that's something that for most of us it might not be. I'm not sure whether it is or not. We don't think about that, but but it is an important aspect, right? How do you control access to the network so that there is a full control over that, right? Who can access network, who can get an IP, because can be privileged networks or not, and that's quite a powerful thing to give access to a specific network. So that's important. And then implementation agnostic. This is this is downward API. Okay, so this is reference ability to pass data. All right. So I think let's tackle those two for now, and then we can move to the phase 3. But I think for those two, our initial, and just maybe talk about the access control. I think our initial idea back when we started thinking about this was could we just introduce a attach verb in RBAC? Apparently, verbs are just verbs, and you can just add them if you want. That was one of the ideas. I think recently what I learned from DRA, they do just quotas, right? And you either have a quota for create a specific or use a specific resource, or you do not, right? And that's how DRA is planning to do the at least this is what I understand from the last time I heard about this, and maybe the recent changes to what Lionel you linked had changed that aspect. But from what I heard, there was a quota for your resource, however it's enumerated, and basically if you don't have quota for to use a resource, you just can't use it, right? So I think that's more elegant, and I think reusing the array, so that's a value added for us to not worrying we wouldn't have to worry much about implementation wise on that aspect if we just use the array, right? And the same aspect, right? So whatever they would plan to do with terms of RBAC and permissions, we just write on the array, since we would treat network and attaching to a network as getting a specific resource from it. And the base resource, when you think about this, can be just an IP, right? So a network like that would be the base resource a network can have. If it's a non-IP interface, it can be just number of interfaces that you can have on the node, and it can just represent some value. It doesn't have to be an IP then, right? And of course, when I think we had some ideas where it can be even like bandwidth or what's not, right? So you can kind of go a bit more crazy on what the resource can be for your network. So that's something that definitely we want to have the flexibility to do, where dealing with these things, where you define what's basically the resource is. I think in our, let's call it reference implementation, we would just go with IP to keep it simple. An IP as a resource where you identify that, okay, I need at least one IP for this, and if you're not assigned quota for the IP, then you cannot attach to that resource, and that's it. Thoughts, opinions, or other ideas? I think that's what kind of mostly I was thinking of on around this one, and I'm only one talking, so please chip in.
Just a comment that there's this document DRA 131 scope, and then they have this access control quota in this nice to have section
Okay.
for 131. So I'm not sure if it will happen or not, but I think it's planned.
It's you say it is in, or is it is punted to the next one?
It's in the nice to have. Like
okay,
there is
so probably.
I can send the document in the chat. And yeah, I'm not sure. At least they are saying understanding how it will work and how they want to do it.
Right, and I think that's what we should just, because we should kind of pull and reuse. Oh, here, yeah, I see. Nice to have stack access control quota. Yeah. So I think that was one of the ideas. But what I'm thinking here, what can be the direction here is to just reuse whatever the array uses, right? So that we are consistent and there is no need to ask for us to what I want to say, develop a new thing on top of that, right? Since we are already using the array, why not, right? So if they resolve that issue, then we should have that solved as well. Do we agree, or you think we should have something more elaborate?
This seems good to me.
Yeah. All right. Let me just write that down. Mm. All right. I think there is that. Any other comments to this one? I think with that speed, we can probably implement the whole things. If not, then let's move on.
Can I have a question just to get to understand this?
Yeah, go ahead.
A quota for me, I mean, all file systems is a limit in number of resources.
No, I think the quota here, this is like you would think of a quota in public cloud when you have the number of specific, the number of repetitions of number of items you can create for a specific resource, right? So let's say you can have a quota in your project to create 100 VMs, right? That's your, and then basically projects will come in public cloud with default quotas, right?
Yeah, but it's a number. It's a limitation of resources, isn't it? It does not
correct.
restrict you from attaching to a network.
No, then what should happen is I agree with you that you can leverage that to do what you want, right? So I can give you a permission to create a quota item because you want to create, or I can give permissions for the namespace to create a quota, right? And that's how I can leverage that aspect for this, right?
Can this item be matched to a specific network then, or could I attach to any network with that quota?
I'm not sure how. So keep in mind, this will be attached to the DRA resource, right?
Yeah.
And basically, hard to tell me how they will end up doing this, and that's a fair kind of ideological question from your point, because when you think quotas, this is okay, how many resources in the whole thing you can create, not basically whether you can really attach to it or not, right? You could, what I'm saying, maybe this is a hacky way to use the quota value, and maybe that's not going, and maybe that's going to be brought up and raised as a concern by DRA community as well, but if anything, what I'm saying, that's possible as well, right? Where
I agree with that. I will look up. I don't remember how this was done in OpenStack and Neutron, because you had some kind of access control for the network there, but I don't remember how they did it.
I think that wasn't there like I don't know. I don't know. No, I cannot speak up to that. No.
Me neither, but I will also look into this, just to see.
But I think that's how you could kind of leverage the quota kind of concept, right? Where do I have the RBAC to create the quota object? Let's say that, right? And if I can't, then I cannot create the resource, right? If I can, maybe my service account has the permission to create the quota object. So for which, how do I control for which network or for which resource, right? That's important aspect, right? So there are kind of nuances that needs to be kind of devils in the detail on how to kind of properly, okay, you can attach to that network, not to that one, right? So how you control that, right, as well. So ensure that as even permission to create a quota object, if there is such one, it's not enough, because you can then point the quota to any object you wish, and then that's not exactly what you want. You need to be able to create a quota on a specific network, right? You want to give that permissions only, right? So
I mean, sometimes this is very important by customers that somebody cannot attach to their network.
Exactly. And even at that, even the aspect, but exactly, it's more of a case where it's some sort of multi-tenancy cluster, right? Where you have your I don't know, database application, and then and team, and then you have your web team, and then you want to have their permissions kind of, they are isolated to a namespace, let's say, just kind of hypothetical use case, and they are bound to a namespaces, and then you want to limit whatever they can, how much power they want, right? You want them to attach to a network, not to every network, right?
As you said, maybe you want them to give them access to a database to do queries or something. I don't know.
Machine, you're linking to storage, did something like that? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. The number of storage claims and classes, each namespace. They have it for CPU memory, but they extend with the storage.
Okay. So there is already a pattern. Okay. So basically, then can that be probably reused as well here?
Yeah, something similar they might have at least in mind.
So the problem has been somehow solved for storage. So I think providing the same, using the same pattern for other objects, that will be easy for everyone, because then it's the same concepts, right? If you use it for storage,
is it mounting point? So what is a discriminator for a user? I mean, it's not really the same as a network, I think. I don't know.
Almost. I mean, if you look at the resource claim and the resource classes, let's simplify you do the same with PVCs. You have a storage class and a set of claims, and then there is a boundary with the quota. How many of those claims?
How many of those? But maybe you want to have specific. I mean, if I have 5, I can go to 5 different. I don't know.
No, I think this is per class then. So assuming, so then assuming for each class is your network, and that's how you for class A, for network A, you have quota 0, because you cannot attach to that one. But then maybe some other network you do have some quota.
So you're digital. You're either 0 or okay. I mean, it's a no or yes question.
So it's both. I think. Sorry, maybe I didn't understand. Could you repeat?
The quota itself, is it a 0 or 1? I mean, will I get?
No, I would say this is 0 or a specific number, right? So now you cannot attach at all, or you can attach n values.
Why would I want to attach 5 different networks, or 5 of the same network, or what does it mean?
Because then you the quota kind of, as I said, that's maybe fair and not. You might be at a network, might not be where you have limited IP resource. Maybe it's a somehow publicly facing a network. So basically, pod gets a public IP right away, and you want to limit that. So you want to have very limited access to that. But that can be
with public networks. Is another use case, I think, and there I can see
right. But then internal network if you don't care about just 0, 1 from your point, 0, 1 meaning enabled or disabled, then you give the number of pods per node, right, as the quota, right? So if I have a max pods per node is maybe no, that's a bad value, because you can have multiple. So I think, yeah, that's fair. That might be fair, because how you count, I think then you limit the value to the maximum number of pods in the namespace, or you allowed for the you allow for the specific user to create in their area, right? So I think that's might be tricky. I agree, because then it's true false on the whether you can even access, and then if you want to quota, that should be another value. I see what you're saying. That's fair, but yeah, that's why I think maybe there is a bunch of smart folks in the DRA team that probably is gonna raise that concern what you're bringing up. But how it is done, but storage has the same problem. Moshin, are you familiar with storage? Because that's the same, right, or not?
Yeah, it's similar. I mean, you define a set of classes, and then if you don't set quotas, I mean, any workload can, and within each controller can ask for as many PVCs as they want. But then even that one, maybe it's not dimensioned towards the total network storage and so forth. You want to limit that. And they do the same thing with CPU. You can deploy as many workloads, but within this quota.
Moshin, isn't it? It's more resource management than access control, what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's resource management, but it's access control of how much you can do. It's everything from config map, the number of the services you can run within a namespace, because either you have constraints or you want to have some limits that each namespace you could always extend with other, but within a cluster they have multi-tenancy, and they want to let's call monitor the amount of resources that can be allocated at max by
so I assume with this machine, if I'm looking at it from what you just described, you do have the free options. So you allow everyone, so you don't create a quota. Anyone can access from a specific namespace. You don't create a quota for that namespace. Let's limit at least to the namespace, right? So you don't create the quota for that namespace. That means everyone and at any number you can pull from for that resource, right? That's one option. You create a quota with 0, you block, means you completely block that access for that namespace. Or you create with the third options where I want to have a limited number, right? So you have then the three options to what we would want to do, right? With that single object, Anders, you can do then all three combinations.
Okay.
You see that?
I see. Yeah. Maybe that is that the way to do it.
Yeah. Because that's kind of indirect. I forgot about the option where you don't create a quota, right? That gives you then the
It feels to me like you are trying to implement, for say, memory protection by putting like a limit size on it. That's not the way to do
it. So yeah, that's what I was saying. Ideological kind of concepts, or whether that's a problem or not. I assume they did it in storage, because I would say that's the same problem, right? I can say with storage you can access it or don't or not, and then because it may be fast speed SSDs and you don't want to give it to anyone, so you can give even permissions or not. Or last option, you can give permissions but with a limited number of resources, right? So that's I can make the same. I think that the pattern is applicable on both cases, whether it's a network or storage. So I'm not sure whether that's a big difference.
Okay, fine.
I just saw now, which I never had before. For the GPU, they have also the quota for the total number you can request per namespace, because maybe it's a scared.
Yeah, but this is protection of the GPU, not access control of the pods.
No, but yeah, I think maybe could be misleading, the access control. But the access control, it gives you, or the cluster admin might give you the possibility to assign and set those quotas as you want, either freely or for some dedicated namespace you want them to behave in some way, and so on. At least my understanding, but I could be wrong. Will be worth to follow what was the discussion in the array about it, but I think they are on the same route. It's resource handling in general.
But Anders, what will be the difference between access control through quota or a special, let's say, verb attach? What will be the end result will be the same, won't it?
I think it's an ideological difference, because you want to protect the device from getting overused, and then you don't really care who is using it. You say, I don't want to. I want to have 5 users, not anymore. But when we talk about access control, it's like Lionel might use this network, but Moshin should not. And it can be implemented, as far as you say. But
no, but that's isn't. Because then, but as we said, right, this can be on what level you would want to do it. Are you saying you would want to have the permissions on a service account level then?
I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I think that
because keep in mind that
would be okay, but that's a different. Maybe that's a different way. But to me, it would be easier.
What will that mean is when you think about this, like from the kind of cluster point of view, right? You have a namespace. I think that's how you divide workloads. And that's why we all talk about namespace based or namespace attached at kind of permissions or quotas, right? If you, and what you're saying, you would want to have 2 service accounts where one service account can create or attach to a network and the other service account in the same namespace cannot.
Yeah.
Is that, if I can list all the pods and you can already attach on the namespace, the isolation is already broken, right? Even if you have 2 separate service accounts, right? Yeah. You see that problem, right? That's why it's bound to namespace, and that's why if it's bound to namespace, then okay, you have only your service account is bound to that namespace, and you can only list that guy, and then that namespace is limited or allowed or disallowed to do with the specific network or quota, right? To that matter. So I think the end result would be the same. I know you're looking from the perspective of probably. Yeah, you mentioned OpenStack or maybe even Open Cloud, public cloud. Then maybe it's not 1-to-1, but this is Kubernetes cluster. So
you know,
we need to kind of put it through prism of that, right?
I just want to have a clear philosophical base on it. That's what I mean. And then it's usually good to look how is this done before. I mean, because that other people can understand.
That's I think. So on that one, whether other people understand, this is where reusing patterns that were already applied in storage, for example, right? I think then that applies, right? So that should be okay because people are familiar with whatever is being done here. So using the same thing in this area, okay, that's fine. So I understand that because I use it already in storage. So on that matter, if someone's deployed something in Kubernetes, then that will be reusing the patterns is always the best thing, right? In a specific platform.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. That was a good discussion. All right. Any other comments or questions on the permission? If not, then the other item, the next item, it should be quick as well because I think we touched on this, right? Lionel, even I think in kind of mentioned that the implementation agnostic pod network interface. So this is the passing some standardized ways to pass to the pod on which interface is what network and what IP it has or what IP is assigned, maybe any other additional extra parameters, whatever they should be, right? I think in this matter, DRA again helps because it's a CDI or not, unless I'm wrong, Lionel, correct me. You could, we were able to pass some environmental variables, right?
With CDI, yes, but I think we want to use NRI and
yeah, exactly.
if you can correct that, but we cannot modify the environment variable or annotation from a NRI, right?
Annotation, I assume you can still do that, right? If you have the annotation is always possibility if you have the service account for Kubernetes, right?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, but okay. In that case, you
But,
can also modify
but that's
the...
still, now we are reverting, and that's not the best, because then you expect the workload to have Kubernetes access and have Kubernetes access and pull the pod.
And you
from
need to have a network already then to be able to do that, or what? Default network, or what? I mean, sometimes if you want to get some data from the API server, from the controller, I mean, then you need to have the network to do that, or?
Oh, I know what you're calling out. Yes, and that's fair,
Mm.
and that's exactly what I was kind of almost talking about, something similar, where then the pod inside the workload,
Yeah.
the application inside the pod has to have the capability to reach out to the API to get itself right, and then it can read the namespace. So I don't think that's what Multus does today, and that's what kind of we are used to. But I think that's we should not do that. We should not. That's where we're basically downward API should be better. I wonder whether that is something that can be done better. And this is the problem here, right? Because if we cannot do it through CDI, because I thought that CDI can be I was remembering CDI where we were able to do it. But yes, if you were to use NRI, I think that's not possible. I wonder what's then the next step here. Any ideas? Because I'm kind of stumped here. I think we have Mike. Mike, do you know, is there anything that we could kind of hack and slash or kind of enable, or there is some path maybe in containerd or in the CRI path that we could something?
Yeah, we can pretty much do anything that's necessary here. If you need to set an environment, we can do that.
So you're saying about from NRI even?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
And then, but the question would be to set it inside the. I'm not sure how's that done though. I'm not familiar with that code.
Well, when you create a container, we have the a priori modifications you can make to the specification of that container, which includes the environment variables that are going to be used. I don't see why we can't do that.
Yeah, for the container hook, but not for the pod sandbox, run pod sandbox hook.
Well, yeah. I mean, did you? It doesn't really apply just quite yet, right? An environment variable until you actually have a container. The pod is, although we are putting in a feature in the pod to be able to specify a mount that's going to be used across all the containers, if they're targeted, volume mounts. So you can have like a pod image. Although you do that, I mean, there's no need for the pod itself to have an environment variable just yet.
How is it done today? Is that like even when CDI sets the environment variable? I assume that's being done on the kubelet, in the kubelet level, and that environment variables are being passed to containerd. Is that true? And then each container
on the container, yeah. I don't remember seeing any environment variables being passed for the pod. It would be generic across all the containers of that pod, but we do have the annotations, as was mentioned by Leo.
What do you mean annotations? What are those then? What?
Well, any pod annotations are also passed to the container. So if there was anything in particular you needed to inject at the device layer inside of kubelet, a CDI device, then yeah, you could do that. You could add an annotation there. Although it's not preferable, right? I mean, if there was literally something that you needed to pass to all the containers, some generic set of environment variables, then yeah, we could do that. We own the CRI API, right? So we just need to sit down with the CRI team as well and decide, what we want to add there in the CRI for pods to add additional environment variables. unless you wanted those to be overrides.
So on the annotations, when you call, is that something that's, I know there is an option to pass now. There is a field, and I think Antonio was doing that, where you can pass annotation to the CNI. Is that the same thing for containers when it starts? Is that
Yeah. Same annotation. So when you create your pod spec, you can define an annotation for that pod, and then that annotation is passed subsequently on the run pod, and we store it in meta. We could call the APIs and add some additional stuff like meta for add environment variables for all containers, but it doesn't seem like really the pattern we want to do. I don't know. The annotations, we already do that, right? Pod annotations are passed.
And they are set as environmental variable. How they are passed?
No. You can. That's not what I'm saying. Right now, we don't have an environment variable, to my knowledge, on the pod spec, right? Or on the run pod structure that's passed into the CRI, but we do on container creates. But we do have the pod annotations that are passed to every container create.
Oh, and then we could reuse that to pass it as an set it.
Yeah, that's the general. I mean, I don't want to call it a hack, but without modifying the actual parameters of the pod structure passed into run pod, we already have annotation. So that's why a lot of experimental, if you will say, right? Processes use these annotations because they're already passed down.
Yeah, that's an option. I think, all right.
But yeah, I'm not really sure what your pattern is, what you're looking for.
I think one pattern that I think most of us are used to is the device plugin is setting up the PCI underscore name of the resource and then PCI IDs for. I think this is what's being done by device plugin, where that's how environmental variable is set for if you pass a specific resource, right? I think this is maybe that's only done through device.
I see. So it's a handoff. Okay, I got it. So the binary is going to read it at runtime.
Exactly. So because you don't want the binary inside the container to now go to API and get information about yourself. And even if you get those information, how do I match them against whatever is in your names? Now, probably then you can, right? But that's the problem, right? Why do I have to go to the API if I could maybe get those information from environmental variable, right? Where, I run like kubeconfig, right? Kubeconfig is environmental variable in pod, right? So something like this, right? Where
and although there is a task that held for each pod, we don't really get explicit about the environment variables of that task in the runtime handler, although you could do it in a runtime handler, right? If you wanted a custom one, as NVIDIA does. But I don't think you want all of the CNI device objects to do that. Maybe, right? I mean, certainly if we had some way to configure that, or if you wanted to, we could pass something through the NRI API, so for CNI specific for those objects on the pod. I don't see a reason why we couldn't do that.
Okay, so that's an option. So that's something that we probably can, I think, look into of what.
Sure.
I think. What does that mean? What does that mean implementation? Yeah, and what you were asking.
Yeah, it means in Containerd, where we do the Go CNI execution of the CNI plugin, we would have to set the environment for that exec, right? Before calling it.
Yeah.
When we create a task, we would just add an additional environment for that. So
exactly.
That, I mean, that's very doable. Like I say, anything's really doable here. You just, we just got to think about what we want.
Yeah, fair. And then if you
even your config for CNI could have that, right? I mean, I don't know if you already have it in CNI, but there could be environment variables for CNI.
So I think that at that level we I think don't care much. I think there we have most of the data we can, I think. But I think what's missing is the runtime, right? When container runs and how do I know which interface that I have is what, right? I think that's the main problem we want to solve. So we want to pass that data without the application needing to reach out to the API, right, for that info. So that's okay. I'm starting up and I can set up myself accordingly. I'm looking for, let's say, default network, and I'm looking for network because that's how I passed an argument into my application. Look for network X,
Right.
and then
So container, right? So container food needs a smart NIC to be associated with the NVIDIA A100 accelerator, blah blah blah. Right. There's your 2 claims that you need to have on that particular container pod.
Yeah.
And if you don't
and
have
then the
that,
application as it starts,
right.
it doesn't require you to. It can be then even happen in init, right? Where it initializes without even going to the API, and it can
Right.
auto-initialize. Do I have all the?
Sure. If it's right, so I guess that's interesting. So I guess even in a smart NIC, you would be associating that across the network namespace of the pod.
Yeah. But I think that's
if you needed 2, 1 for each container, you'd have to have 2 claims. I think is the way the DRA guys are trying to do it.
So there is that aspect of because now what you're calling out is then if the resource is like a raw PCI path, right? But I'm thinking that aspect exists as well, and that one needs to be solved as what you are calling out. This one is per container, but there is the case of net device, right? When it is just normal net device, which is then not per container but per pod. Just keep in mind.
That's why I brought up smart NIC. I'm assuming, like in the OpenStack pattern, that that's the direction we're headed for these AI accelerators. That one particular AI they're going to need extra bandwidth to move these this inference data back and forth, right? At least they're going to want to have a network device that's not perturbed by an image pole, for example. So ETH0 isn't the device they want.
So having said that, what would be the next? Because this would be a pair kind of container runtime implementation, right? So I would have to like go to the most so what containerd and CRI-O, right? Those 2 at least.
And we of course already that NRI is supported by both of them. So
all right. So we
would work with them to get agreement on any particular additional capability of NRI. But
right. Okay. So that's something that I think this is low level. That's something where we would want to get some integration and then just get that variables to at least expose.
I like it. I hadn't even thought about the need for setting additional environment variables on CNI connections. So
it's valuable because as I said, we want to get some feedback, and even at that, it even like let's say you will have some sort of source-based filtering done on your interface, and your interface has been passed as a VFIO, right? So basically just a syspath, not a net device. At that point, you don't have any IP assigned to that, but then you need to know which IP to use for that interface, because you have, even though it's a not net device, but down in the kind of infrastructure under the hood, there is a source IP verification. So you cannot use just any IP. You should use the one that got assigned to you, and this is what I would pass through that environmental variable, right? Your application, where I would say let's say it's a DPDK application, and basically the application that knows, oh, I need to use this particular IP for this to communicate outside, right? Rather than I come up and look out for those data somewhere else. I can got it. I get everything here. So this is this is the assigned IP for me. This is the network name, and I know I have to attach to that network and all that, right? So that kind of information is very useful to have as an environmental variable. Today, I think we pass them as download API because we get them from annotations. If that's right. I'm not sure. Someone was calling that out. That's how we do it today, where the pods annotations are passed as a download API. But I would like to improve that, right? So that we do not have to go to the pod and I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's, I will call that out.
You mean, Maciej, about the downward API today?
Yes.
Yeah, it has pod annotations or metadata annotations. So yeah.
Yeah. So basically what happens is Multus, if I'm not mistaken, Multus updates the annotation, and then you just make sure that annotations are passed into the pod as a path or something, right?
Yeah.
So we would want to kind of automate that process, right? A, you don't have to put anything into pod annotation, and B, you don't have to set up the download API, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, you have to set up something right in the pod spec to get that download API. Is that correct, Mostin?
Yeah, and the labels and annotation, they are the only two that you cannot get today from environment and variable, only
exactly.
from downward API.
Yeah. So basically that's, we want to replace this, right? I know it works, but I think we don't want to use annotations for this data, right? The IP should be on the claims, and per interface parameters, right, should be there. And then here we should just pass them as environmental variables. I think that's the easiest way to kind of go about that.
Just a question on option 1, modify NRI to provide ability to set environment variable. Is this for pods or container? Because for container, it's already possible.
So, and what do you mean that I have to, but then I have to explicitly, can I say, set that variable for all the containers? Can I not say that? Then it's solved then, right?
No, that's what I was saying earlier. You can already do this on a container, but at the pod level, we don't have a container. I mean, there's a pods container, but that probably shouldn't be exposed.
But then, no, but then what I'm getting at is, if I can do it on a container level, can I not set the same value for each container?
Well, you can set that. That's why it's really 1 and 2, right? In the pod, you can have an annotation. And that annotation, just by specifying it in the spec, which can be done by device, management inside of Kubelet. You can just inject, right, or have a controller that injects the annotation you need. And then you can pull that annotation from your NRI plugin and add the environment variable, right? There's a name value pair from the annotation. That's just a way to pass, what you want the environment variable to be added from the pod spec. But I don't see why we couldn't have the ability to add an environment variable from the plugin as well, if that's really what we need to do.
Yeah, that's what I think we're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that Kubelet's not going to know about it, and that might be a problem.
I don't think Kubelet knows about the resources that we pass. That's fine.
Well, I mean, if Kubelet doesn't know about it, you'd have to have a back channel integration from your NRI plugin manager for the device type to tell it what you assign to a particular pod. Is that if you know what I'm saying?
Not really.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. So on the claim, right, when you're assigning this environment variable to say this pod, every container is going to have this device. That's sort of a claim, right? That needs to be upward propagated to Kubelet so that it knows not to schedule another one of these.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
That's a limited resource on that node. So somehow that's got to get back up. If you already had if the pod spec had that requirement in it, right? Or if it was injected at the Kubelet layer.
So that part, keep in mind, that part is already, we are counting on TRA to already handle that part for us. And that's not the problem. The problem is
Right.
Where do I now feed the status of the whatever I did, right? That's what we want to get. We don't want this kind of kubelet would be aware about the DRA and the whole path, right? So we'll receive all the data from those, and then we do the NRI does its magic, sets up whatever it has to set up, and now it auto discovered, or it was passed, whatever the case. Let's say the IP address was set on the interface, right? And I want to now pass back to the pod's environmental environments through through environmental variable. I want to pass back that, okay, network X uses IP Y, right? That information, I want to pass that into the runtime of the container. And that information doesn't have to be, that information for kubelet will be passed in a different way, right? And that's not completely subject to this. This is just about the ability to pass.
So this is a map. This is a direct map then from the DRA claim to an actual environment variable that you want to be in the
kind of, yeah, exactly. You might think, yeah.
That makes sense. I see. Yeah, I guess I was trying to dual use the claim and any environment variables that could be set in the pod spec for the claim.
No, we don't want. We want. So my goal is to not automate the whole thing. So
I got you.
we would, let's say we create
you want a layer of abstraction so it can work outside of kubelet.
Yeah,
as well.
Basically that.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
All right, I think we are at the time. I will bring up the topic of continuing next week discussion on the chat and see who can pick it up. I think the next thing that's
on that option one on that text, say, for a pod. Pod.
Okay.
Just.
There you go. Fair point.
And again, I assume that's not for the shim, it's actually for the containers in that pod.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. As I mentioned, I will bring up that I'm out next week, and someone's gonna drive the next week. I think the next week topics will be just continuing the discussion on the items. This is good. I think we need to explore more on this one, on whether this is how possible this is the NRI changes are, and it's something that, yeah, it may be not happening immediately. We always have the existing approach. If anything, but then we want to improve that, right? So this is something that we can definitely start working with the CRIs and see whether CCRs and see whether that's something viable to do. All right, folks. Thanks everyone, and I probably hear and see you in a few weeks when I'm back, and then next week, as I said, someone's gonna probably drive that. If not, then in 2 weeks, definitely Doug is gonna be back. Oh no, we said we are canceling. Sorry. Apologies. Next week is 4th July. We said we're gonna cancel that. Let me just call that out. I think there's something that Nathan was calling out. So let me just say that this is 4th July week. So let me just do this. Okay.
Oh, then vacations will start in Sweden. I don't know. Should we inform about that, or is it just to not show up?
Say again.
Vacations will start in Sweden in 2 weeks. I mean, it's a general vacation.
July 4th. Woo!
Yeah. Should we just don't show up? Or, yeah.
So those are like I think from some US side, probably next week won't be here. But if you want to drive the discussion, then yeah. Last time we did some week off as well for Europe. There was some stuff, but I don't know. Yeah, let's bring that up on the chat and see whether that's the case. All right, folks. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.